Welcome to Advanced Nurses. We connect with nurses who inspire other nurses by sharing their experiences. And so we're able to bring that information to you.
Today we are chatting with Cambria Nwosu, DNP, LNC, healthcare pro, social media influencer, and legal nurse consultant.
I just want my audience to have get a paper, get a pencil, get your notepads out. We are going to be learning today. We're going to be learning about how nurses can transition into this side of healthcare. Also, how you got into nursing and what made you start your business.
Okay.
Yes.
So for me, just to back up a little bit, I've been a nurse, I believe it's going on 15, 16 years now, but I've been, my nursing background, I started in perioperative nursing. So I was both a circulating and a scrub nurse, did all specialties with the exception of cardiac. And I did that for quite some time. And from there, I transitioned into more nursing leader roles, like team lead. They would call it back then service line coordinator, where you would run the service line. And I was heavily into neurosurgery. That was my top specialty at the multiple hospitals that I did work at. From there, I was actually recruited by other hospitals to run, because again, people that are not clinical don't know the difference between neurosurgery and neurology. So they just assumed, oh, she knows neurology, we're going to have her run our stroke programs. So a completely different jump out of the operating room. But I ended up running stroke programs in Arizona for a couple of health systems for a few years and learned a lot. I actually learned more on the ICU neuro side as well as the ED, even the tele side. So actually it opened my eyes a lot more, both on how to run a program, as well as work side by side with the nursing and, physician staff on taking care of these patients. From there, I was recruited to run a telemedicine program, also in neurology. So I kind of moved completely out of the hospital setting. And this was around the time COVID started back in 2020. And then from there, like I said, actually, like in the midst of all that, between me transitioning out of the OR, my clinical didactic instructor from nursing school, who I'm still very close to this day, and we still communicate, Professor Fleming, I absolutely love her. She actually transitioned into legal nurse consulting years ago, and she always kind of like pitched that in my ear. She's like, you need to look at this. She said, the way, you're doing a lot of executive roles, you're doing a lot of administrative nursing roles, this is right up your alley. So I said, so then like during the COVID period, and even a little before then, I started looking and investigating more into what this role is and what is the world of legal nurse consulting. And that's actually how I started pivoting. And even though I was still working full time as a full-time nurse, I started consulting and doing that on the side. And now I'm doing that full time because it does take some time, as with any business, it does take time to grow and develop. So that's kind of like how I transitioned. And the transition made sense for me personally, only just because I saw firsthand how broken parts of the system were. Nurses deal with constant moral distress, unsafe staffing, burnout. And so I also believe heavily, and to this day, that nurses are underrepresented in legal and policy issues, right? Usually you'll see physicians and administrators make these type of big decisions that affect patient care. And then nurses are always the ones living with the consequences at the bedside. So I wanted to leverage my clinical expertise to influence the system, if that makes sense. And so that's kind of like where legal nurse consulting worked for me, because it did give me a lane where I can still use my voice to advocate for both patients and nurses. But I can do this in a legal space, in the courtrooms, even like insurance reviews, or even behind the scenes working with a law firm or an attorney group in the legal process. So hopefully that all makes sense, and that's a lot. But that's kind of like why now I feel more in tune in doing this full time.
What skills do you believe if a nurse possessed? So let's, like in your case, someone saw your talents and skills. They seen it, said, "Hey, you got it." You know, what are some of those? What does some of those skills look like? You did highlight executive roles, some administrative responsibilities. What are some other skills you think a nurse should acquire, or if they possess, would make them a good fit to transition into legal nurse consultant roles?
Great question. So there's a few things I always say. Any type of nurse, you don't have to be an executive, you do not have to be an administrator to do this. And first of all, this is open to both RNs and LPNs. So I definitely want to bring that to the forefront. If you have nursing experience, and usually at minimum 2 to 3 years of nursing experience, you can be a legal nurse consultant. So a lot of people have this misconception that, you know, you have to have decades of years of experience. You have to be very well versed in all the specialties, and then you also have to actually be, transitioning more in an executive role to do this, and it's not the case. What nurses need, and all nurses, if you're a great nurse, which we all are, all you have to be is organized, analytical, and detail-oriented. Those are the biggest things, because all of us document in charts. We know how to review a chart. We know how to catch things that are missed. Like, that is our role. We're advocating for the patient. So you're already halfway there if you already know how to do that. The other piece for nurses, you do have to build a strong clinical portfolio, meaning that not just the clinical side matters. You also need to know, for legal nurse consulting, the technical side. So there's usually courses that are not super expensive that you can take that teaches the technical side, which is how to write a medical chronology, how to look up standards of care, how to actually write a report that is feasible for a legal team. And then there's also, you do need to know the business side of the house. Most legal nurse consultants are independent contractors. So this is going to be a business that you own. Some nurses, they create LLCs. Some, me and my husband, we actually created an S Corp because of the side of business that he does. So this is where you do need knowledge in how to know on the business side, how should your contracts look, marketing yourself, and even how to acquire clients. So all of that on top of your clinical expertise is going to be necessary, because it's not just a role, it's a business. You are the product. And so you have to see yourself in that manner when it comes to this particular subset of nursing. And then I always say, you don't have to do it all overnight. I always say, start consulting on the side, like do it either pro bono just to get some experience in, or do it part-time and build your confidence, because it's going to take, just like learning a whole new piece of subspecialty of nursing, you do have to build your confidence and then gradually step into this. But I do want to also just let nurses know, you don't need 20 years of experience to do it. You've taken care of patients. It's great that it's even better if you have different specialties under your belt, but I would never say don't let that be a deterrent. As long as you're organized, you know how to look through medical charts, you know how to catch things that are missing, then this is for you. And then also, I always say there's 3 core skills a nurse must have. They must have critical thinking. They must know how to analyze a document. Usually that document is a medical record. And then communication. Those are the 3 core skills. You have to know how to break down a medical timeline quickly. What happened? Who did what and when and why? You need to know the pattern recognition in a medical chart and try to understand the difference between what's a deviation in care versus what was a simple documentation oversight. on the communication side, you should know how to translate clinical findings into legally relevant language. And so this is where the courses I was talking about before are very relevant. You do need to, I hate to say dumb it down, but in a way you do. Not everyone speaks medical jargon. Not everyone's going to understand that a K means potassium. So you have to know how to do that so an attorney and even a jury can understand what you're saying. And then, of course, your business skills, like I said before, a lot of nurses I've noticed that enter fields like this, they do struggle with undercharging for their services or overgiving. So you really can't advocate for any other person legally if you don't know how to advocate for yourself financially. So knowing what the market value is, what your expertise, brings to the table is paramount. So, but those are like my biggest core things that I think any nurse, most likely if you've worked in nursing long enough, even for a few years, you already have all of those down packed. It's more so the nuances of running the business as well as knowing the legalities of the merits of a case. And that's the part that you do have to learn.
Oh, thank you. Great answer. Great answer. So I am curious about the certification itself. So what is that process like? Is there a requirement for nurses to be certified if they want to become legal nurse consultants? And do you have any recommendations on the first step in that direction?
So in current day, there is only one accrediting body that I am aware of that do actual certifications for legal nurse consulting. And in order to even qualify to be certified, you have to have years of hours of experience under your belt. So I say that to answer your question, no, a certification is not required to even be a part of the field. Usually the biggest roadblock I see, again, is really marketing. To have attorneys and law firms know who you are, trust in your product, that's going to take time. And even subcontracting with other legal nurse consultants, having them trust your work, that also takes time and skill to actually develop those relationships. But the certification itself, you have to have the experience and actual billable hours in order to even qualify to be certified. So that's why I say don't let that be like the end all. And also, I know some legal nurse consultants that have continued their practices have been very successful without the certification. Personally, I think it's a nice to have when you have all those hours under your belt. And then this is through the AALNC. And they actually have great membership options, and they also have a great conference that they do every year, like most nursing organizations, but it is not a requirement to actually start in the field and to be successful in the field.
So it sounds like, if I heard you correctly, if I'm not making anything up here, it sounds like a big push, if you're interested in going into legal nurse consulting work, is that you, first of all, want to build out your portfolio. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a proven track record. So that means that not only are you going to be building out your portfolio, but when you do work on projects, that you're cataloging those hours, you're cataloging that product, that finished product.
That's correct.
And you should also be looking at how to massage that into your resume, not only quantitatively, but also really demonstrating the mastery of those skills and how you're applying your clinical knowledge in this space for you to be impactful. So, because I'm big on promoting branding for nurses, I actually work with a developer who's developed a tool that we advertise here on my platforms, because of the fact that I'm big on nurses really understanding how to market themselves. But what you just said is so key, because it dispelled the notion or the misconception around requiring a certification to go into legal nurse consulting. And then
Correct.
secondly, how do you actually put yourself out there as a nurse who once was doing bedside work and now transitioning over to legal? So branding, adopting new practices in your resume and how you market yourself, and then also cataloging your work. And this is something I feel like nurses really struggle with. And I only say this
Yes.
for their resumes. Oftentimes, nurses will be telling me about a job that they're interested in going into. And I look at their resume. And this is no shade to any nurse I've worked with, all the nurses I've ever worked with. You hear this, you know that this is coming from a place of love. But I've seen resumes 5, 6, 7 pages. And a lot of it is they're cataloging, but it's almost like they're throwing a stone behind their back after they're done doing work. And they just throw the sprinkles of whatever came from that job on the resume, and they're just building up a resume because essentially, as a nurse, who's telling you, or what in nursing school is telling you that you have to be up to date in your resume, keep your resume, 5 years, no longer than 5 year look back. I mean, like, who's there to tell you in nursing school, any place that you need to do that? Most of us as nurses, when we're in nursing school, you're pretty much pumped to go, it's pumped into you rather for you to go to med surge, master what you're learning in med surge. If you get into ICU or CCU, then you're hot stuff. And that's really it. So it's very kind of, you spend 5 years doing this, you spend 10 years doing this, then you go get another degree, then you go get this. It's like this progression. And no one's really telling nurses about all the little steps in between to navigate transition. So that's really what I focus on. So I'm so glad you pointed all of this out, because if it was a certification, nurses would just be either counting themselves out, I don't think I'm gonna do well in that certification, or they'd say, I'm just only going to focus on the certification. But here you're saying, hey, there's a lot more steps in between if this is what the finish line looks like. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No, absolutely.
Want to add to that?
No, I mean, I completely agree. And to your point, we're drilled in nursing school really to pass exams and just make it in med surge, to your point. And I completely did the opposite. I went straight into the operating room. Like I did not do med surge. And again, everyone's journey is different. And I think piggybacking on your first question about burnout, I think nurses really need to understand that your instinct, if you are feeling burnt out, it is legit. It is absolutely warranted. It is real, and it's not your fault. The health system as is designed today, and especially with the way things have been going, especially this year when it comes to healthcare, it is not designed for nurses long term. So I just think it behooves nurses, no matter how many years of experience that you have, you should always be looking at something more than, and especially something that promotes you, right? And your clinical expertise. And sometimes hospital settings just don't do that. And it's not the fault of, whoever is still working, because clearly we still need bedside nurses. So definitely don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But to your point, yes, this is where I did kind of fall in love with legal nurse consulting, because it definitely basically told me, just come as you are, but we want to make sure that you're ready. And certifications, like I said, are a nice to have. It is not a requirement of competency. It's not a requirement of skill. And I think that's truly important, because we can have the best nurse in the world, but then if they're all just stuck on getting certified and taking the exam, does that really show true competency? And that's kind of like where people get stuck at, to your point. So
yes, thank you. And so I guess I want to also find out what led you to get your DNP?
Yeah, so to be honest, that was always my terminal goal as soon as I started nursing school, only just because for me, and again, I can only speak for myself, for me being Black, being a woman, I always knew eventually I would either run systems or run a business. in nursing. And so for me, I just thought that was the natural progression to go for my doctorate degree. And my doctorate is in healthcare administration. So I I personally always believe, if for me, that if you're going to start school, finish it. And for me, I was like, well, to finish it, that means my doctorate. So then there's no misconceptions about my expertise, about my education, even though to this day there still is, just because systemic racism will always exist in the United States. I just felt that that was always going to be the goal. So, and again, that's not for everyone. And I definitely applaud our nurses who do go for higher education, even the ones that don't. Because at the end of the day, the experience is what matters. But for me personally, that was always a personal attribute of mine to get my doctorate. I would be the first in my family to get one. And I'm very proud that I got one. So that's kind of like, it's like a little bit of mix of a personal and professional journey for me.
And I think that's awesome. That's so good. And I'm glad you shared that, because for me, and one of the reasons why I'm so glad you shared that is because I think a lot of times people think that when people go into nursing, especially because of all this language about nursing being a calling, sometimes
Right.
people believe that they've been called to it, and like the priesthood or like anything else somebody's been called to, they've been called to do it in this cookie cutter way. And
Right.
one of the things about nursing that I do think that some people envy is that how dynamic it is. It's very
Mhm.
different than if a physician is spending all these years, in a particular specialty, they hit the jackpot. If it's a
Mhm.
specialty that they love, it's lucrative, they can get good work-life balance. I think it's a different circumstance when they go into a specialty and spend all these years in a specialty that they fall out of love with, because then you see
Right.
a lot of the grumbling like, oh, I wish I didn't do this, I wish I didn't do that. Nursing's a
Right.
lot more flexibility around where you can apply your knowledge.
Mhm.
Although I still warn nurses, spend the time that you need to spend at any place that you're at, get what you need to put in your toolbox and keep it moving.
Agree.
Don't spend too much time being defined in spaces where you don't really see yourself growing, especially if
Mhm.
there's not a lot of opportunities for you to advance.
Right.
And so for me personally, I remember being very resentful when I earned my master's in nursing education, because I expected so much more from the program. And it wasn't the
Mhm.
school itself, it was just the degree program. I honestly feel like the degree itself, not the program, but the
Right.
degree itself. I think nursing education, although there's a lot of research there, the application of that degree, like in the actual uh, work world, if you want to call it the workforce, I
Right.
didn't see where it was applicable. When I
Mhm.
started to learn about coding and clinical documentation, that's when I
Mhm.
realized, okay, I think I hit something, because I knew
Mhm.
that it was a space where I would have opportunity to continue to grow. I would have opportunity to collaborate with people other than um, just other nurses. I knew that I would be able to apply, like, I love data analysis. I love the collaboration piece. I love root cause analysis and all those kind of things. I knew that I
Mhm.
would be able to do that transitioning into health information management, and still
Mhm.
yet being very tied to that clinical knowledge. Now,
Right.
granted, I'm not like most other nurses. I did not spend any time really, zero time in the hospital, but any real time
Mhm.
doing any like direct patient care. Most of my
Mhm.
work was the only direct patient care I've ever done actually was working psych. I worked for psych, worked psych for a few years. Everything else has been
Okay.
case management and working for payers. And
Mhm.
so once I transitioned to HIM, I was screaming on the rooftop to women, to nurses, like, especially my black nurses, who honestly, for so many reasons, may find a lot of doors closed, or
Right.
even mentally, maybe the perception,
Right.
they feel like, I don't know if I'd be able to transition out of a typical nursing role. I am here to tell you, and every single person that I meet, we are here to tell you, you can transition. And what I love about what you said, Cambria, and I mean, I love it to my heart, is the fact that you said you don't need the certification. It's about
Right.
being deliberate. It's about
Right.
putting your hands on the steering wheel, controlling your destiny. And
Right.
then when you are doing that on the side, right? Like you said, you start
Mhm.
your LLC, you do it on the side. When you're doing it
Mhm.
on the side, you take that information now and you start cataloging it. You put
Mhm.
together a portfolio and build those relationships on your way through and up, because those are the same people you're going to lean back to and say, hey, I need a reference, and
Correct.
my mentor, I've written references for my mentor. I can probably count on one hand, because it's usually the opposite way where I'm more so reaching out to him. But I've done that for my mentor, which to me was a huge accomplishment, because that meant I stuck with this thing long enough that I was even able
Mhm.
to see my mentor go to higher heights, and him reaching out to me to say,
Mhm.
I'm proud of you as a student. I'm proud of you as somebody who learned from me. Can you, help me out with this reference as a peer, as a colleague, not just like a one hand wash the other, but as a colleague and peer. And that's
Right.
another important part of networking and building community. And that's one of the things that I really, really want to do here with my platforms, is
Mhm.
to really build that community. I want to do a tour of your website. So
Oh,
you can
sure.
tell me exactly what you would like me to do.
Oh,
I'll follow your guidance. And can you see the screen?
yes, I can see the screen.
So
Yeah,
you
I
can
think
just
for
let me know where do you want me to
yeah, so when you click on
I
the
follow your lead.
menu, yeah, when you click on the menu to the right there, all the way, yeah. And then you can just go to legal nurse consultant there. When you click there, it should load in a second. And this is basically all about, when you scroll down, this is all about me, my background, as well as what consultant services that I bring to the table. So definitely you can keep, yeah, you keep going. There you go.
Beautiful. I love this.
And I'm pretty much, I try to make it um make sense, especially to, outside of people that are in the healthcare field, to understand what I bring to the table. But then also a great note here, that's why I do list the states. Just because you are licensed in one state, you can do legal nurse consulting in other states. Because again, you're not physically practicing and providing patient care. So that's also a great thing that a lot of people don't know. And so people mistake sometimes legal nurse consulting with being expert witnesses. And expert witnesses is a completely different aspect, where you do have to, a lot of times in certain states, depending on the case, you do have to be licensed in that state, to basically speak on the scope of practice of that state. But as far as being a legal nurse consultant, reviewing medical records, advising attorneys and insurance companies on certain cases, on whether it has merit, was this truly a malpractice case, did the nurse go outside of scope of practice, you can do that and represent, you can do that in your state and then do a case in a completely different state, because at the end of the day, nursing is nursing, right? It's just, yes, our boards of nursing may have little quirks to it, but the scope of practice is pretty much the same across the board. This is why we all take the NCLEX. So I think that's also good to know for any potential nurses that, either want to research or try to dibble and dab into it. You do not have to be stuck in the one state. And this is where it's great for me, because then I can work virtually, and represent different types of cases in different types of states. So,
Well, I will include your contact information in the description of this video. Do you offer services for nurses who are interested in transitioning? Do you do anything like that?
so I don't formally consult with nurses, not in a formal sense, like your business model. However, nurses have reached out to me, mostly on social media, surprisingly. And that's how we met. But mostly on social media, they'll direct message me they'll have questions or they need guidance or advice, and I do give it with no problem at all. So I always say I am always open to assisting nurses whenever they need it, because I wish we had more camaraderie when it comes to that, where it doesn't have a stipulation or anything like that. But I don't have like a formal consulting arm just for nurses. I don't. That's something possibly I could look at towards in the future. I just know, quite frankly, I'm just too busy right now with clients, current clients, with my social media presence that's growing every day, as well as, you know, just being a mom and a wife. So I, you know, also have to make sure, you know, I don't spread myself too thin either. But I always say for nurses, if you have a question or if you need guidance, even just on nursing as general, but even in the legal nursing space, I can always make myself available to answer questions or even to guide in different circles, like different distribution lists and things of that nature that can get you your foot in the door. So that option's always available.
Well, I thank you so much. And the contact information, is it the 973-932-6031 phone number?
Yes, that's the business line.
Okay.
Also, I always say, because sometimes the lines are very busy, but I also say you can DM me directly. You can reach out to me in my Instagram. So that's at CJN Legal Nurse. That's always a contact. Or if you want to email me, sometimes people email me items as well. So that's lnc@sunincorp.net. So that's a direct email to me as well. So, but I do check like all of my messages. I check my direct messages. As long as it's not spam or anything like that, I will answer. So yeah, and that's my page, definitely. So I do advise. I personally built my social media platform by advocating. And again, this is like my legal nurse consulting hat. I'm advocating again for nurses, even for doctors, even for patients, and try to spread news that we do not see on mainstream news media that people need to know. So I always say, check out my page, and then you can also message me directly there as well.
We want to hear from you. Schedule a free consultation or send us an email at advancednurses@acd4n.com or visit our websites www.advancednurses.info or www.acd4n.com.